Hi, and welcome back to the review of Unit 6, World's Most Boring Person. So in the preview, I mentioned that a university, or the University of Essex in the UK, has declared that a data entry worker who lives in a medium-sized city or a small city and likes to watch TV on the weekends is the description of the most boring person in the world. And we talked a little bit about the job factor, but there are other factors that help determine. So hobbies, we mentioned watching TV. Sleeping is also considered a boring hobby. It's not really a hobby, but if that's how you spend your weekends,
extra sleep.
People might think you're boring, yes. Yeah. But even going outside is not necessarily a guarantee of interestingness, because bird watchers are also considered somewhat boring. And religion, or having hobbies related to religion, like service or something like that, is good for your soul. It might elevate your soul, but people might think you're boring.
Elevate.
Elevate.
Unfortunately. Your soul might be more important, though. And then also where you live. So they said, or respondents to the survey, liked people who lived in big cities and small villages. But if you're living in a small city or like a suburb or something like that, they seem to think that's a pretty mediocre place to live. Although they are, convenient.
Mediocre.
Mediocre.
It's quieter than a big city and has all the convenience of living in a city, but just mediocre on the survey. But the important thing to remember here is that this is basically just a stereotype. So even if you do tick all of those boxes, data entry worker, watches TV, or bird watches, and lives in a medium-sized city, you still could be a pretty interesting person.
Tick all the boxes.
Tick all the boxes.
Just, if you're going to tell jokes, don't tell the same joke every time, because that was also considered a very boring habit. Okay, so going back to the where you live, why do you think that big city life is considered so interesting?
Well, it's where all the action happens, I think, and going back about 150, 200 years, many trends in the developing countries is always movement to a big city. That's where the economic situation is, the jobs, and then that's where all the excitement, people gathering together. And in America's case, like some of the big cities are like the melting pot. All these different styles and lifestyles and people there, and you get to see many different things live different ways. Other than what's like the kind of status quo daily habits of countryside or smaller cities. That's my thought about why maybe big cities are considered interesting. What is your thought?
I agree. Having grown up in a small town, not small enough, I think, to be considered interesting, so a suburb. So I grew up in one of those mediocre, boring places of the world, and now I obviously live in a very large city.
Yes.
And it's hard to imagine going back there, because it is very different, and you meet so many different kinds of people from all over the world, people who are doing interesting things. So yeah, I think that there's like arts and music and all kinds of stuff going on in the city. So big city life is interesting, but the irony is that, a lot of the bankers and financial analysts and all of those people are also living in the city. Far more perhaps than most of the small towns. So so you can live in the city, I guess, and still be boring. How about the small towns? So the survey did find that people think that people who live in really small villages or small towns are also interesting.
I think it's kind of like the dichotomy, like big city, there's like a mad rush of everything, and there's so much going on, but the very small cities is so different that it's peaceful, it's quaint, it's homey, everyone's friendly maybe together, and so the big city people like that from time to time, but vice versa, I don't know, maybe the small people want to go to the bigger city.
True.
But I like to see it as, because those smaller city people and towns are so rare that it's kind of intriguing to see somebody from there or visit there maybe.
Yeah, it is a different kind of lifestyle, and people might be imagining people hunting for themselves or growing their own vegetables or having, some kind of other, raising animals, etc.
It's a vastly different pace of life.
Exactly, other life experiences that they don't get to experience in their small, medium-sized towns. Okay, and so that is all for the review of Unit 6, World's Most Boring Person. We'll see you in the next video.